Imagine waking up one morning in 14th century Europe. The city is still there, the familiar streets are still there. But one thing has vanished forever, the sound of life. No voices bargaining in the marketplace, no children laughing in the streets. Instead, church bells ring again and again, not to call people to prayer, but to announce that once more, someone did not wake up. People no longer ask who passed away today. They whisper only one question: will I still be alive tomorrow? In the middle of the 14th century, an invisible catastrophe began to spread across Europe. No one knew where it came from. No one understood why it moved so fast. All people knew was that when it arrived, an entire family could disappear within days. Towns that were once crowded suddenly became empty, as if time itself had stopped. In just a few short years, millions of people were no longer present on the map of humanity. For those living at the time, this was not just a strange illness. It felt like a shadow slowly swallowing the entire world. As the number of losses rose beyond control, major cities fell into chaos. There were not enough people to care for the weak, and certainly not enough to handle the final duties. Carts filled with motionless bodies rolled silently through narrow streets. Many houses were sealed forever because no one inside remained to answer. People avoided each other's eyes because even a brief touch of the hand was enough to spark panic. At this point, Europe felt like a living nightmare on Earth. When no one understood what was happening, human imagination filled the silence with frightening rumors. Some believed the air itself was cursed, that breathing was enough to bring the end closer. Others claimed the stars in the sky had shifted out of order, signaling the final age. There were even whispers that water sources had been poisoned by unseen forces. These rumors spread faster than the disaster itself, allowing fear to invade not only the streets, but also people's sleep. In the 14th century, when science had no answers, religion became the only anchor. Many believed this was not coincidence, but punishment from heaven. They thought humanity had strayed too far from faith, and this was a severe warning. Groups dressed in dark robes marched through cities, praying day and night in hopes that devotion could calm an unseen wrath. In desperation, belief was no longer a choice. It was the only thing left. But when fear reaches its peak, people always seek someone to blame. Foreigners, isolated communities, or anyone who lived differently became targets of suspicion. Some were driven from the places they once called home. Others were accused of causing every misfortune. In the shadow of catastrophe, the ugliest side of humanity slowly emerged. Fear no longer came only from the invisible threat outside, but from fellow humans themselves. It took centuries for humanity to understand what truly happened. The Black Plague was not a curse nor a message from heaven. It was the result of harsh living conditions, polluted environments, and the lack of knowledge of the era. But for those who endured the nightmare, this truth arrived far too late. The memories, the ruined cities, and the shattered families were carved permanently into history. So what was the Black Plague really? A natural disaster, or a mirror reflecting the deepest fears of humanity when faced with something beyond control? If you lived at that time, when reason had no answers and darkness stood at your door, would you trust science or believe it was a message from heaven? Perhaps the most frightening part of the Black Plague was not what happened, but how people reacted when their world collapsed.